PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly, and on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are going to be discussing a very interesting situation and mentioning, should the Vegas Golden Knights make a trade? And here's what I mean by this. Obviously, we saw what just happened, okay? We saw what's happened in the playoffs. We saw what happened in the series with Dallas and everything that's going on. But a question that really I should be bringing up is, should the Vegas Golden Knights make a trade heading into next season? Should your Vegas Golden Knights call up an organization and say, hey, do you want to make a trade? And if Vegas does that, how would it be done? What players, what assets would you have on the table for your Vegas Golden Knights in order to give up and acquire something else? So I'm going to give you not one option, not two options, not three options, but four different options on should your Vegas Golden Knights make a trade, and should they make their team better heading into next year. So, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. We are here on PR Connections Radio. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. Go to our website, www.prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. Check out all the amazing content we have on the network. We have over a dozen shows on the platform, including Vegas Hockey Hub. We also give a shout out to Classy Communications for helping us with PR Connections Radio. Proud sponsor of PR Connections Radio. So Classy Communications, I do appreciate them. And go to our social media pages as well at Vegas Hockey Hub. We're on social media. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We are everywhere. You cannot escape us. It is at Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you want to follow your host, I am also on all social media pages at Ian J. Kelly. And really getting into this and starting this out, we're going to go to option A. And is this going to be short-sighted? Possibly. Could this be because of my disappointment for how he performed in the postseason? Most likely. And is this definitely an option that could be explored if the Golden Knights get a good enough return in value? Absolutely. Who I am talking about with option A is someone who has been a misfit, someone who has been a day one member of your Vegas Golden Knights organization, someone who, when they got him from the expansion draft, was a steal at the time and has paid off in massive dividends since. And I'm talking about on your second defensive pairing, alongside Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore. Shea Theodore, man, there is some love and hate on Shea Theodore, depending on what side of the fan base you ask. There's people who love Shea Theodore. They love his offensive presence. His offensive metrics are off the chart. They're among the best in all hockey. He's a fan favorite here in Vegas. There are people that love what he does for the community and everything like that. So there's a portion of the fan base that would never even consider trading Shea Theodore. All right, there's a fraction of the fan base who would tell you that Shea Theodore is actually undervalued, and his contract, his $5.25 million, is actually an undersell. All right? He's actually not making nearly enough what his value is in terms of what his next contract is going to be. But then you have the other side of the Vegas Golden Knights fan base. There are people who don't like his defensive style. There are people who get annoyed with how he plays defensively. there are people on the Vegas Golden Knights fan base and people that are part of, Vegas Golden Knights in terms of social media, in terms of the people who are doing the recordings and all these websites, people who are attached to the Golden Knights, where I see Shea Theodore being traded, it pops up like almost every week now. All right, during the trade deadline, I swore I saw at least 5 different articles about Shea Theodore possibly being flipped. The last offseason prior, there was all these reports about Shea Theodore being sent to Toronto for Mitch Marner. I swear, Shea Theodore is the definition of a love-hate relationship between the media, the fans, and the actual team itself. Because I'm not going to sit here and say the team loves him or hates him, but here's what I will say. The fan base, 60-40. I think 60% of them love him, and the other 40% doesn't like what he does defensively. The media is like 40-60. It feels like the media, 40% of them want him to stay, and 60% of him want to leave. Now, what is Vegas Hockey Hub? What does your host, Ian Rakelli, say about Shea Theodore? Well, if you watched my review of Game 5, all right, if you go to our Vegas Hockey Hub, you go to our YouTube channel, and you click a couple of videos back, if you watch the Game 5 review I did about Shea Theodore, you will know that when it came to Game 5, I created a good solid 7 minutes of content talking about when you put Shea Theodore in the defensive zone, my oh my, do not put a puck on his stick. For some reason, in the defensive zone, he likes to just give the puck to the opposing team. In terms of giveaways, in terms of just, giving the puck away to Dallas, it was done repeatedly in that series. Turnovers in the neutral zone, unusual shifts. You also got to talk about the fact that when it came to Shea Theodore, apparently, when it comes to being on the back check, he did not do a great job in the series against Dallas. And I was a very harsh critic on that. And like I said, this is premature. This is probably short-sighted because we still have the Dallas series fresh in our minds right now. But Shea Theodore, defensively, is not a $5 million player. Offensively, he's probably $8 million. Defensively, I would say $2 million, $2.5 million. He is a liability at times, defensively. Defensively, him creating turnovers, him making errors, him making mistakes, it has become a trend over the last couple of years. And since I'm just going to be talking about my opinion here, if it wasn't for Brayden McNabb being one of the best shot blockers in all of hockey, if Brayden McNabb was not so great defensively and not being that good offensively, it outweighs and it actually kind of evens out Shea Theodore's lack of defensive production. Brayden McNabb has to outperform defensively to make up for Shea Theodore. And then offensively, Shea Theodore has to overperform to make up for Brayden McNabb because he doesn't score that many goals. So on paper, they even each other out. On paper, it seems like an even deal. Shea Theodore focuses on the offense. Brayden McNabb focuses on the defense. But anyone who knows hockey would know that if you are a professional, all right, if you're an NHL player, you gotta be good at both, especially defensively. You need to be good at both. And I understand there's people who are great defensively and then they're just average offensively, or vice versa. They're great offensively and average defensively, but that's okay because great and average will make you a good player. But what happens when you are great offensively, but you are underwhelming defensively? And more importantly, what happens when you are a defenseman? Okay, I would understand if this was a Dustin Byfuglien situation where you went from being a forward and then converted yourself to a defenseman, right? Or vice versa. when you were a defenseman and you converted yourself to a forward. We've seen that happen in the past. But Shea Theodore is not a forward scoring all these goals and lighting up the lamp and getting points and stuff like that and then struggling a bit defensively. No, this is a defenseman who struggles when it comes to being in his own zone. This is a defenseman who, shoot, in Game 4, I remember he gave the puck directly to, I think, Jason Roberson. Like, he literally just handed it straight to him. Like, it seemed like he wasn't even trying to get to hurdle. He was just looking at Jason Roberson and was like, oh, here you go. Take it. So, with Shea Theodore, should the Golden Knights make a trade? It varies on what you think he is worth. Now, if you are someone that wants to call up the New York Rangers and try to make a trade between defensemen where you swap defensemen, okay, I can see the argument there. If you want to call up an organization for you're just going to spitball here for a second. All right, you call up the New York Rangers, you swap defensemen, that's good for you. The last 2 seasons, we have seen so many articles and so many reports about, Mitch Marner could be traded to Vegas. Honestly, I don't see it happening. Realistically, I don't know how it would work in terms of actually getting the money and everything right. But, okay, you trade Shea Theodore and you bring back a guy like Mitch Marner. All right, you are bringing in additional value by giving away Shea Theodore. Okay, you call up the New York Rangers, like I mentioned before, and you trade and you do a swap for somebody younger. Let's just say K-Andre Miller, just for argument's sake. So you're bringing in somebody younger that has more years on his deal. Shea Theodore would go somewhere, have 1 year left on his deal. However, they could bridge that into a contract extension to whichever team he goes to. Same would apply for a team like Montreal, who actually would need some defensive help because of the moves they have made over the last couple of years. Their defense does need some work. There's some young guys in the wings, but they do not have anybody solid, concrete at the moment in terms of being top heavy. All right, you call up Montreal, you call up New York, you call up Toronto. Hey, you know what? You call up Detroit because Steve Yzerman loves to have guys that can shoot that can shoot the puck. You know what? Chicago Blackhawks, while you're at it, if the Chicago Blackhawks want to start winning with Connor Bedard, you get Shea Theodore go to Chicago, and you do get some young assets back. It just depends on what Vegas wants to do. It depends on what Kelly McCrimmon wants to do. It depends on what George McPhee wants to do. It depends on what Bill Foley wants to do. Because I have no doubt in my mind that Shea Theodore is liked by Vegas. Okay? He is someone who's been here for 7 seasons. All right? He's someone who has been a day one guy, a misfit, like I mentioned before. But in terms of talent, in terms of what he can do as a player, you have to ask yourself, if I call up the Boston Bruins and I can try to get a goaltender that's currently an RFA, would I be able to give up Shea Theodore and something additional to get a RFA who's a goaltender right now? I don't know. If you're Vegas, would you make that deal? Bringing in a goaltender who is in his prime and having him be teamed up with Aiden Hill and have him be a 1-2 punch. I don't know. That's up to you. So depending on what you do with Shea Theodore, he has 1 year left on his deal. All right, and I have to give credit to Cap Friendly, by the way, for always their information. Cap Friendly, by the way, one of the best websites in the world when it comes to hockey. So Shea Theodore, 1 year left on his deal. And thanks to that, having $5.2 million, 1 year left on his deal. Now, him having a modified no trade clause, 5-team no trade list, there's kind of a way to work around that. We've seen that before with it being a modified no trade list. So with Shea Theodore, 29 years old, all right, he's going to be 30 years old next year. When he hits free agency, is Vegas going to bring him back? I mean, after all, we have seen what's happened with defensemen with the Vegas Golden Knights in the past. All right, we have had examples of guys like Nate Schmidt who leave the Vegas Golden Knights, they get traded, and then they go somewhere else after they leave the original team that got traded to. We've also had examples of when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, letting a defenseman go in free agency and allowing them to bring in somebody better, allowing somebody from Henderson or someone from the AHL to come in and be able to actually take advantage of the opportunity and be in the starting lineup. So the Shea Theodore, should the Golden Knights make a trade? That's what this video is about. Should the Vegas Golden Knights make a trade? Option A, Shea Theodore. 1 year left on his deal, $5.2 million cap hit, and he has a modified no trade list, a 5-team no trade list. The question you need to be asking yourself isn't, should the Golden Knights keep Shea Theodore? The question you need to be asking yourself is, will the Golden Knights be able to bring back Shea Theodore next year? If Vegas knows that Shea Theodore is not coming back, and we've heard this argument before with additional players, if you know that Shea Theodore is on the way out, that he's not coming back to the Golden Knights organization, it makes sense to go out and get a valuable asset in return. Like I mentioned with the proposed trades that I just did off the top of my head, you know what? Call up Boston and get their goaltender that's an RFA that they still haven't done a deal with. Call up Chicago. Get some assets back. I mean, after all, the Vegas Golden Knights, in terms of draft capital, is lacking in that category. I mean, this is a Vegas Golden Knights team that does not have, a first-round pick in 2025, and I think they also don't have a first-round pick in 2026 as well, if I vaguely remember. So, if you're Vegas, is Shea Theodore worth a first-round pick? Would Shea Theodore be worth a second? Would he be worth a third? Whatever the situation would be, if you are the Vegas Golden Knights, trading Shea Theodore, there's so many variables in that equation. I will say to you that you only trade Shea Theodore if you can get a value back that is worth it. Like I mentioned, if you can get a first-round pick back from a team like Chicago that's currently rebuilding around Connor Bedard, I'd say make that deal. If you can go to Detroit, which has a young system, they have so many young guys in their system. If you could get a Shea Theodore and acquire a prospect in a second from Detroit, I would say do it. Call it Montreal and get one of their young guys. Maybe get a prospect in a second. That's just what I'm saying here. Or call up the New York Rangers. Do a swap. We heard about this before. Trading defensemen with New York and Vegas. But the one trade that I really do not see happening, I've seen it in the rumor mill. I've seen it in the rumor sheets. People have talked about it for months. No. Shea Theodore for Mitch Marner. The money will not work. All right, we did a Ryan Reeves video on Vegas Hockey Hub not that while ago where I said the same thing. You could try to trade for Ryan Reeves, but then that adds an additional $1.3 million to a cap hit that Vegas really does not have. And you also got to remember that Vegas has to give out contract extensions very soon down the road to valuable players. So if you're Vegas, you really can't make the money work for Toronto. So for Shea Theodore, let me close this out by saying this. If you are the Vegas Golden Knights, trade Shea Theodore if you A, know he's not coming back next year, or B, you realize you can get a better value or more monetary value by trading him and bringing back somebody else. So that's option A. Option B for the Golden Knights making a trade comes down to how deep their defense is. The Vegas Golden Knights defensively is their strong suit. Alex Pietrangelo, he's going to be the highest paid player on the team in terms of salary. He's making a cool $12 million, one of the top 10 highest paid players in the league. Alex Pietrangelo, he is your anchor when it comes to your defense. Noah Hanifin, they extended him before the postseason. He will be here for years. He's in his prime. They're expecting Hanifin and Pietrangelo to be your 1A, 1B scenario for the next couple of years. You got that in lock. Brayden McNabb has been your solid rock, your constant of defense since day one. And yes, I know Brayden McNabb has 1 year left on his deal, but because he only makes a little over $2 million, once again, shout out to Cap Friendly for the information, and with him having a no-trade list, about 5-team no-trade list, I say for Brayden McNabb, he's pretty secure. Shea Theodore, even though I just spent the last 20 minutes kind of bashing the guy, and I will apologize, it's not personal, but Shea Theodore and Brayden McNabb have been your great defensive pairing that have been together ever since Schmidt got traded and England retired. They put McNabb and Theodore together. And then you have Nick Hague, who actually provided a lot of value and showed some really good chemistry with Noah Hanifin the back end of the year when Pietrangelo was out. And then Zach Whitecloud, who they extended, he'll be here for the next 4 or 5 years. Zach Whitecloud, he has potential. Nick Hague, he has potential. Ben Hutton has been a consistent 7th man for the Vegas Golden Knights, and they extended him this past year. So because Vegas has 7 defensemen already, and let's also not forget that in the minors, you have Lucas Cormier, who is the top prospect the Vegas Golden Knights have. They also have guys like Joe Fleming, who are making their way up through the minors. You have Danny Chaka, who they drafted in the 2nd round from Russia a few years back. Dyson Mayo, who they acquired from the Shea Weber trade. But there's one defenseman who is about almost 24 years old. He is making a little over $800,000 in terms of salary. And for some reason, he has just not been able to crack the starting lineup without injuries. All right, when injuries happen, he's been put into the lineup. But when it comes to option 2, I sit here and say, do you trade Caden Korczak and give him a chance to start somewhere else? Very similar to the whole Braden Bahal being claimed on waivers by Calgary. Calgary's been able to use him. Similar to Neil Myra-Manoff, putting him in the trade for Noah Hanifin. He goes to Calgary. Now Myra-Manoff is actually kind of creating a everyday starter type of situation in Calgary. If you're Vegas and you have such a log jam on defense, would you offload a guy like Caden Korczak, get, maybe some future assets back, or maybe do a prospect swap? We've seen those happen in the NHL before. But trade Caden Korczak and allow him, as him being almost 24 years old, 2 years left on his deal, give him the opportunity to go play somewhere else and become an everyday starter. Now, Vegas Hockey Hub, your host Ian Rakelli, I wouldn't want that, okay? I wouldn't want that because I'm a fan of Caden Korczak. I was watching him in Henderson when he was at Orleans Arena, eventually went down to the Dollar Loan Center, and Caden Korczak is a NHL caliber defenseman. He's ready, okay? He is actually ready. We saw that Caden Korczak was developing very well and played alongside Brayden McNabb when Shea Theodore got hurt at the beginning of this past season. In fact, Caden Korczak has played almost about 40 games in the NHL, so he's really not a prospect anymore. He's kind of on the fringe of no longer being a prospect, now being an NHL caliber defenseman. But I just look at it and go, if you're a fan of Caden Korczak, like your host Ian Rakelli is, If you're the Vegas Golden Knights, you have to give him an opportunity. He's no longer an AHL player. I'm just saying this for real. He is no longer at that level where you stick him in the AHL and wait for him to develop. Hey, he has developed. So you either have him be in the starting roster. He could be a healthy scratch, okay, but have him be on the NHL roster or trade him and go to an organization that can use a Caden Korzak. Now, some teams that come to mind when it comes to organizations that do need defenseman depth, I look at the Arizona Coyotes, now turned Utah Hockey Club. This is a team that has bolstered their defense somewhat over the past few years, but they still are lacking in terms of depth. So having Caden Korzak go to Utah, used to be Arizona, I think that would be a good move for him. Maybe call up a team like the Vancouver Canucks, an organization that, like I said, in terms of depth, adding an additional NHL defenseman, that could be a good move for them. I also look at a team like the Seattle Kraken, for example. This is a team that has had an influx of defensemen coming in and out of that situation since the expansion draft. And then one final team that I am going to be putting out there is the New York Rangers. I did mention the New York Rangers with Shea Theodore. I will be mentioning the New York Rangers here because the New York Rangers organization, defensively, they have been a carousel. They really have been moving around defensemen over the last couple of years. They've had an influx of young defensemen being in the starting lineup. And if you're a young defenseman, the New York Rangers seem like an excellent fit for you if you want to make your name known. Playing at MSG, the most iconic hockey stadium in the world. I mean, this is just a situation where if you look at hockey arenas, MSG is right up there in terms of top-tier hockey arenas. But yeah, Caden Korzak, I just want him to play. And I say that option B would be a really good idea. I think Caden Korzak belongs in the NHL, no longer an AHLer. And if you can't make that work in Vegas, then I recommend trading him, getting a draft pick back in return, and letting him go play as an NHLer somewhere else. Now, option C, we're talking about should the Vegas Golden Knights make a trade. Option C, a first-round pick. Wait a minute. Vegas Hockey Hub, didn't you just say that they do not have a first-round pick in 2025 and in 2026? That is correct. I did say that. However, I do want to let you know that when it comes to draft picks, you still have a 2027 first-round pick. Okay? You have a 2027 first-round pick that you have available. And if you are the Vegas Golden Knights, and by the time this stuff does happen, you also have a 2028 draft class that you can work with. And if you're Vegas and you want to make a splash, if you want to add another star player to your team, I mean, shoot, you traded your 2025 first-round pick for Tomas Hertl. You traded your 2026 first-round pick for Noah Hanifin. Let's just be honest. That 2024 first-round pick, you're probably going to trade them away at some point. It's what the Vegas Golden Knights do. Brendan Bryson hasn't been traded, which is such an anomaly with this team. Pretty much everybody except Cody Glass has been traded at some point. As a matter of fact, he got traded on later, but not before. So Cody Glass and Brendan Bryson are the only two first-round picks that have played for your Vegas Golden Knights in terms of long-term at all. So for terms of first-round picks, the Vegas Golden Knights trading them away, it's like an annual tradition. They do it anyway. I will not be shocked if it happens. Now, option D. Well, us having about 45 seconds left. Option D. You don't make a trade. Option D, you stay firm, you stay put, and you do not make a deal. You have nothing to do with it. Kelly McCrimmon, George McPhee, Bill Foley, you stay put. And the Vegas Golden Knights keep the roster that we have now, and whatever the heck happens moving forward. Now, this is Vegas Hockey Hub talking about should the Vegas Golden Knights make a trade. And until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go